So John F. Kennedy issued an executive order 11110, and it bypassed the Federal Reserve Bank, a private bank created by traders in the US government in 1913. That bank has been in control of this country ever since, and it's only increased its power the whole way. Who controls that bank? Private bankers. Rothschilds, top of the heap. Jewish bankers. Let's cut it straight. Jewish bankers. I would get less trouble if I was Zionist. They're fucking Jewish. They identify as Jewish. Now, having said that, I have known many, many, many good Jewish people. There are some amazing Jewish dissidents in Israel who face enormous consequences for speaking honestly about what is happening there. Many in the Israeli Defense Forces who've come out and who have spoken publicly, love and respect to these people, really, seriously. So the idea that I hate any group is, first off, just wrong. I don't hate anyone, as I've said. I don't hate Jewish people, I don't hate anyone, for that matter. But there are certain groups within the human population that are involved in activity which is threatening all of us. And what we find is an incredibly disproportionate amount of Jewish people who are involved in these activities. A perfect example, let's get back to 9/11. Let's talk about the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers. How many of you are aware of the fact that there was a long-standing case, a court case, in which the Port Authority, which owned the lease, owned the Twin Towers, the Port Authority of New York had been in a long-standing court case to absolve itself of financial liability for the asbestos that was used in the Twin Towers. For years and years this case had gone on, and funny enough, in 2001, I believe the spring of 2001, the Port Authority lost their case. And the judgment from the court was, you are financially liable for the removal of the asbestos. Think about that. The estimates for removing the asbestos was in the billions. The billions. The Twin Towers were more than half unoccupied. They were financially inviable. They were not viable at all. And they were full of asbestos, which the Port Authority was now on the hook for. Removing. You couldn't just demolish the buildings if you wanted to. You had to actually go in and physically, floor by floor, remove the asbestos from those buildings. How is it possible that two Jewish billionaires, Frank Lowy and Larry Silverstein, these are billionaire businessmen, right? I think there's a thing called due diligence. I believe if you want to make an investment and you're a billionaire, you will hire the best people to analyze all aspects of the deal. And if your analysts conclude that, well, if you buy the lease to these Twin Towers, you will now be liable for the removal of asbestos, that's going to cost you billions. And by the way, the buildings are already less than half full. Imagine if it wasn't two Jewish billionaires, let's imagine that it was two Muslim billionaires who bought the lease to the Twin Towers just a couple of months after the Port Authority was deemed liable. So the Port Authority was able to release itself from liability, and that liability was then in the hands of Frank Lowy and Larry Silverstein.